Hello folks, welcome back to a new week. I hope you're having a good time. I hope things are going well in your lives and that, you know, things are progressing as you want them to progress. We're here with some more Hobby Nightmares today, and before I do anything, I've got a few treats for you. That is right. My Warhammer collection is currently set up, ready to go, right behind me. And I took a few pictures the other day for a live stream that I did. Always be on the lookout for our live streams, by the way. I do them randomly sometimes. Mostly on Sundays, where we stream for a couple of hours and we do a prize draw sometimes. We always do hobby showcases of people's models. And one thing I was always asked is, what do your Space Marines look like these days? Well, here they are on my shelf, ready to go, right? They're ready to be deployed somewhere in the galaxy somewhere. Yeah, here they are. Well, it's one picture of them anyway. And I'll put that picture there as we go through our first Hobby Nightmares. If you like what I do, the subscribe button is down below. And yeah, please like the video. Liking the video is always good and always helps out the channel. So, Wind88 says, "Hi Northern, it's been a while, but it's me again. Wind88 with a short but humorous nightmare. No humans were permanently injured in this dubious episode." Okay, does that mean that they were injured or that they were not injured? Well, we'll get into it. While our gaming group was in university, we used to game nearly every Friday night in the second story of the Student Union building. A study hall layout with a couple of food serving options. Sadly, no alcohol was allowed, but it was perhaps for the better. Yeah, I never really get the... I never really get it when people want to drink when they game. I just can't do it. There were three protagonists in the story. Myself, Dan, a somewhat high-strung, generally nice gamer who smoked a pipe, and Greg, a somewhat geeky gamer with a pixie sense of humour. The second floor of the Union overlooked the lower floor of the building, kind of like a balcony that had 4 foot long that had a 4 foot long high metal and wood railing to keep idiots from falling off the balcony. The bottom part of the railing had a half-inch thick painted vertical steel tubes placed about 11 to 13 inches apart. I was on the upper story, as you do, and rose to purchase a soda from the lower level. I asked if I could pick up one for anybody else to save them the trip. All of the gamers passed on the offer. I walked down the stairs and reached the lower level, and as I walked out into the lower level, Dan suddenly decided that he actually could use a coffee. Fair enough. Now, any normal person would have risen from the chairs we used, stood at the railing, and called down to the lower level about 20 feet away. We found out later that Greg had questioned whether Dan could fit his head between the bars, and Dan was certain that he could. So, he pushed his head between the bars to call down to me to pick him up a coffee. I was surprised, and asked him why he put his head through the railing. He was quite pleased with himself and crowed, "Because I can! Haha!" You can sense where this sense of foreboding is coming from at this point, and rightly so. Take a sip of tea here if you want. No, I want to carry on. The imp Greg from earlier blurted out, "Rah!" and grabbed Dan. Dan's first impulse was to jerk hard to the right. Yes, he smashed his head into the steel bar on his right. The sound reverberated through the Student Union. I swear I heard it far below him. This instant pain caused Dan to swiftly jerk to the left, away from the pain. And again, the bell rang loud throughout the Union. Oh my god. Oh my god, this poor guy's got a concussion. At this point, it was all instinct. Away from the pain on one side, just to smash into the pain on the opposite side. He rang that bell no less than 4 times, until Greg, shocked at the carnage he had caused, grabbed Dan's head and froze him in place. Greg then pulled Dan's head from between the bars slowly, and Dan sat down, stunned and slightly weepy. It took a few minutes for Dan to compose himself, and after we were certain there were no superficial or permanent damage, the laughter soon commenced, and it lasted for a long time. We duly nicknamed Dan Tinkerbell after this, which he suffered with dignity. Fond memories of good old Dan, who unfortunately passed away 15 years ago, succumbing to throat cancer. The pipe smoking had been soothing, but unfortunately quite lethal. Anyway, keep up the good work, Wind88. Well, that's a bittersweet way to end the story, man. I've got to say. Right. Lauren says, I'll take my models off now. In fact, you know what? We can show some more. Hey! I've not done the eyes on the guy in front. Yeah. So our Space Marine chapter for the channel, their armor's technically unpainted. They scrub all the paint off and they put a bit of purple on there, but that's it, basically. Yeah. Cool stuff. And the Hand of North there. The Hand of North. Right. Lawrence says, hello, Mr. North. You can call me Lawrence, and I hope this finds you well. My friend recommended your channel to me a few months ago, and I've really been enjoying your content. He also encouraged me to submit a story of mine, even though it's not really a nightmare, quote-unquote. He assured me that you sometimes include feel-good stories as well. I do, indeed. To give you some context, I recently began working as a computer teacher at one of the local private schools this past year. The most recent school term has been very meaningful to me in many different ways, but I wanted to share the one way I felt the greatest impact that it had on me. Okay, alright. I like it when a teacher comes in, that's cool, that's cool. Excellent stuff. Let me just make sure I've got all your things, ducks in a row here. Let me put that down there. Lovely stuff, excellent. Excellente. There we go, all done, right. Sorry, I need to make sure that all your pictures were up and ready. So, to give you some context... Oh, sorry. Yeah, you've already said that. There was a 6th grade student at my school. We'll call him Nick, who I observed would often be separate from others on the playground. Not many of the other students would interact with him, and I would often hear his other teachers talk about him, complaining about how bad his behaviour was. I got a bit of this at the beginning of the school year, where he would talk back to me after I got on his case about completing assignments. But I didn't let it bother me too much, and he ended up getting the work done. I came to find out later that he had a rough home life earlier in his childhood, and had a lot of other factors that were most likely contributing to his bad behaviour. One day during the first quarter, he came to my classroom during the lunch break to ask about an assignment and saw me re-sleeving some of my Magic the Gathering deck in preparation for Friday Night Commander after I finished work. He instantly identified some of the cards, and the two of us began talking about the game. He told me how his old after-school care monitor from his previous school taught him how to play, and how he really enjoyed the strategy and lore behind the cards. Unfortunately, he didn't have people to play with after moving schools, so he kinda stopped playing. It was a fun conversation, and we did get him the help he needed to finish up the assignment too. He had come for many lunch periods after that to talk Magic. And when I began teaching the younger kids the Pokemon TCG trading card game, he would join in and help me. He's an incredibly smart kid. He just got a very straightforward and blunt attitude. He began to mellow out the more he helped the younger kids learn how to play. Yeah, man, sometimes that's what you need. You need to be very, very careful about how you label kids in schools as problem kids. Some of them aren't. Some of them are just really, really strong-willed. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Don't, bend over backwards to accommodate them. But, you need to make sure that you know what you're dealing with. Anyway. Fast forward a month and Nick joined the Rocket League esports team I had started at the school. He said he had never played the game but thought it was interesting. He quickly became one of my best players, and our team made it all the way to the quarterfinals in our first season. Dude, I play Rocket League. I know, shame on me. I play Rocket League, have done on the channel before as well. After our second season ended this past April, Nick came up to me and asked if I knew anything about Warhammer 40,000. I asked him where he heard about it, and he mentioned seeing it lots of times at one of the local game stores and he thought it looked cool. Coincidentally, it just so happened that I had myself started seriously getting into the hobby last year. I promptly took out my phone and showed him some of the Dark Angels models I had recently finished. Images attached below. Let's do that. Let's have a look at them, shall we? Let's have a look at some of your images. The Eradicators. Very nice, very nice. Very good. Deathwing Terminator. Dude, that's a clean colour scheme, man. That is a clean colour scheme. I like that. Very nicely done. Some others here as well. Inceptors. A lot of you need to invest in better cameras. I mean, I don't, because I don't really take pictures of my models, but like, these models look awesome, man, and they look even better with better camera. That looks amazing. That looks really cool. I like that. I like that a lot. Anyway, the following week, Nick came to me and told me he used his saved up money to get the Space Marine vs. Tyranid Getting Started box set and was excited to build and paint them this summer. I asked him what army he was going to build in the end, but he said he wasn't sure yet. He bought the set to get a feel for building and painting because he really wanted to jump in and try it as soon as possible. When I asked him which model he was going to work on first, he said he was most interested in the Tyranid Termagant since it didn't have to follow a strict colour scheme like the Space Marine, and would probably adapt its colours depending on what the hive mind wanted. I told him that he could paint the models however he liked, but he said he wanted to keep the Marine close to the lore. Alright? He also asked me if I had any extra parts or scraps he could practice painting with. I scrounged up some old unpainted Cadian Troopers and Tempesta Scions I had originally bought and I was going to play when I first got into the hobby and gave them to him. Needless to say, he was pretty stoked and with how cool they looked. As the weeks went by, he would talk about the lore he read up on and how he was going to try the slap chop painting method, and now he had decided on an actual army build. First it was Tyranids, then Orcs, then World Eaters, then Necrons, then Thousand Suns. Yeah, this is a child. This is definitely a child. And then Tau, and then back to World Eaters. I asked him why his choice changed every week, and his response was, "They're all so cool." But he said he went back to the World Eaters because he likes Angron and the idea of rushing into battle yelling, "Blood for the Blood God." Yes, we have a convert, ladies and gentlemen. He is here for life, I think. As this school year was coming to a close, I heard that Nick wasn't re-enrolling and that he was transferring to a school closer to his home. He came to me during the final week of instruction and gave me a letter saying that one of his last assignments was to write a letter to his most influential teacher. This is what I found when I opened up the envelope. Names scratched out for confidentiality. Okay. Let me have a little look here. Oh, isn't that cool, man? Isn't that cool? Thank you for being influential to me and for being the only Warhammer teacher that I see every week, and for talking to me about our shared hobby. Oh my god, that's so cool, man. To the loyalist, whatever, from the heretic, whatever. My god, man, that's cool. Blood for the Blood God. That's cool, dude. I love that. That is cool. That's awesome, dude. We just finished this last school week of this year, around May, with Nick ending the year as an honour roll student. He went from not having friends to being part of a tight-knit group of boys he would eat with at lunch before talking to me at the playground. He and I said our goodbyes, thanking each other for a good year. I wished him luck on building his World Eaters army and that I hope to see him across the tabletop soon. He told me to get ready to be offered to Khorne. Well, that's my story. I hope it gave you a bit of enjoyment. I'm glad to have had Nick as my student this past year, and I wish him well and all his best for his future endeavours. Thank you again for all you do, and keep up the awesome content. Have a good one, Lawrence. Good year for you, man. Good teacher. Absolutely, well done. Well done. Absolutely, well done to you, sir. Right. Snooky is back, ladies and gents. And he says, Dear Mr. North, Snooky here. I hope everything is going well, both at work and at home, and I figured I would share with you a tale of a D&D campaign gone completely wrong. Dude, isn't this like most D&D games these days? I don't know. It's not a game system I enjoy at all. But anyway, just to keep up with the pattern of similar stories from your channel in recent days, but if you feel like this has been repeated too much and you need some variety, feel free to disregard this for another week when it suits a theme you are going for. Well, it did, and here we are this week. This week we will have a lot of role-playing stories as we go into the rest of the week. Anyway, around 3 months ago, I was the Dungeon Master for a special campaign that I had written myself, as well as the mechanics and game modes. I should preface this by saying that I was part of an incredible D&D group. There were around 8 of us, with 3 of us DMing and changing out every couple of months, and that way, we always had variety in the stories and settings we were telling, because of how different our writing styles were. Everybody in the group was very laid back, always showed up on time, and just wanted to have some fun. Sometimes it would be a hijinks, fox person campaign. Furries, man. Get them in the dumpster, and set the dumpster on fire. Where the DM and the players would just have a good time by not taking anything seriously. Sometimes it was brutal, realistic settings with strict rules and roles, which were paid close attention to. All in all, we were fine to play in whatever setting, so long as we were having fun. Okay. Well, it was my turn to be a Dungeon Master, and I was hyping up the complete campaign setting and mechanic system I had been writing. The others were excited too, because we had never done a sci-fi setting before. I called it Warhammer 40k Necromunda, Nobody Escapes the Dark City, and the others weren't too familiar or into Warhammer at the time. Not out of dislike, they just had never really heard of it. They were excited to jump into a new universe with me as the DM, especially because this universe had minis. My formulation of race and classes were either a normal human or an abhuman, and classes were specialised to the different Necromunda gangs. The Ash Wastes nomads had specialised mounts and could use creatures in combat, acting as beastmasters. The Corpse Grinder cultists were barbarians of sorts, and were the pick of the Berserker class. House Cawdor, or Cawdor, were religious monks that could rain down holy fire and act as clerics. House Delac were a mix of rangers and rogues, who went for stealth builds. House Escher were speed freak fighters, who would use bonus attacks and actions because of their movement. House Goliath were a kind of like giants relying on brute strength, and House Orlok was a match of wizard and warlock, while House Van Saar was like a mage. Both of those houses would use large tech advantages that could be used like magic. The Ironhead Squat Prospectors were artificers who were great with practical and combat tech, and the Palatine Enforcers were paladins and acted as peacekeepers. I also added a Genestealer Neophyte / Kellermorph as its own separate race and class that specialised in deception like a bard. Each class had unique skills and traits that I had engineered for them. Dude, that is brilliant. That's kind of like what old Baldur's Gate did with the D&D rules and things like that. Do you know what I mean? You take a class and then make you'd warp it to fit a certain aspect of the setting that you're making. Really cool stuff. I also introduced a blessing system to the campaign, which would cause later random encounters. You could receive a blessing from Khorne, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, Nurgle, the Hive Mind, the Emperor, or the Omnissiah. Each one would grant minor buffs to the player characters, like 1 extra d6 or a bonus of +1 strength, and so on and so on. The Genestealer Neophyte... One second. Sorry about that. The Genestealer Neophyte / Kellermorph class were locked behind the Blessing of the Hive Mind. Cawdor was locked to the Blessing of the Emperor, and the Corpse Grinder cult was locked to Khorne. However, I did make up for this by doubling the blessing effects for these classes. Take a sip of tea here if you want. Insert elevator music here. The storyline of the campaign was to find a Dark Eldar agent inside the bowels of Necromunda. She would be scouting in for a potential raid, and the party would follow some rumours to find her. I decided to name her Shrike. Upon finding Shrike, she would offer the party a very high-stakes job, which was to sabotage some of Necromunda's planetary defences, and in exchange, she would grant the party passage to Comorragh. Dark Eldar tech is worth a lifetime of wages to the Hive scum, so naturally, they seized the chance. Upon completing the job, Shrike expects that they have a way to go to get to a webway gate. Shrike expects they have a way to get to a webway gate, which they do not. The party then has to find a willing rogue trader who will allow them to come along in exchange for protection and a hefty cut of the profit for what they're about to bring in Eldar tech. After this, the party embarks into the stars to find a webway gate, where the closest location of said gate is on a Necron tomb world, unknown to the party. On the planet, a few security protocols begin to attack the party, thus giving them a nice dungeon crawl. The final boss of this dungeon was a Chronomancer, who, in guarding the webway portal, all throughout this time, a Death Watch squad had been sent to the tomb world for scouting and has seen the party and taken chase. The party must evade the Death Watch Marines, as a few Necromunda Hive dwellers can take some Necron warriors and scarabs, but not veteran Space Marines. I don't know, man. Necron warriors are just as powerful. Necron warriors should be slicing apart, you know, some Hive scum with Gauss weaponry with no problem whatsoever. But I get what you're trying to do. It's fine. It's fine. In the webway, Shrike guides them to Comorragh, whereupon she betrays them, thanking them for their work in disabling the Necromunda defences. Of course, I'm skipping a lot of detail here for the sake of time, but the party must then fend off the Dark Eldar, grab as much tech as they can carry, and then escape the Dark City, being able to live out the rest of their lives in riches amongst the stars, no longer needing to return to Necromunda, and taking up life as rogue traders. Okay. Well, doesn't a rogue trader need a writ of trade from the Emperor? Or can a rogue trader be anybody who's just out there doing stuff? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Moving on. Now our group was introduced to two new players. Zoe, and her big brother by a year, Silas. I had no problems with all of this, as the more the merrier, of course. But problems would soon arise. In Session 0, I explained in great detail 3 times that this campaign was not for the faint of heart. That, in the grim darkness of the far future, everybody is out to get you, and being friendly in the slightest with anybody outside the party would most likely result in a swift death. I mean, I agree, but it's not... 40k is not all like that. You can be nice to people, man. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? What I mean, 40k should have choices and consequences, right? But just being nice to somebody shouldn't mean instant death in 40k. Do you know what I'm saying? We need layers and nuance here. Yes, it is very grimdark, and yes, it should have horrible death if you make the wrong decisions. But just being nice to somebody on the street isn't really a wrong decision most of the time, right? Anyway. They all agreed, and I said okay. And who does Silas choose to play? A lawful good Palatine Enforcer. Because of course. I didn't have any problems with his choice until later on, nor did anybody else, but his character made it difficult to get things set up. So I ran with it in the best way that I could. There was Rye and Carol, both Escher speed freaks with wild personalities. Will, who was an Orlok tech priest. Sean, who was a Genestealer Kellermorph gunslinger, who had been accidentally severed from the hive mind synapse. Then there was Maya, our resident corpse grinder. Rev, an ash waste nomad with a mutated giant dustback she named Bean. Dion, the Cawdor zealot. And finally, my character, the rogue trader Martin, who would be used later on. And then, of course, there was Zoe and Silas, and Zoe chose to be a Delac assassin. Have another sip of tea here if you like. I'm good for now, man. Session 0 rolls around, and the group is at my place. Zoe and Silas have been invited from Riv's work and onto our Discord server, and from there to my home. After finishing setup and giving them the warning, we begin. In order to go along with the lawful good Palatine Enforcer Silas had, I began the campaign by having the party bring in an armoured holding cell transport being driven by Silas's character. Silas immediately seemed to revel in this, forming a shit-eating grin on his face and mumbling, "Criminal scum." I advanced the game along by having the transport hit by a corridor IED. Improvised explosive device, right? Yeah, a corridor IED. Because Dion's character was a priest in House Corridor. He sees the sign from the Emperor and the group escapes, with Silas following them, being saved by the party in exchange for not ratting them out. Okay, that's a cool way of doing it, man. That is a cool way of doing it. That's a cool way of doing it. So basically, Silas's character, who's a paladin, his convoy is hit by House Corridor, and right, Dion's character, who's from House Corridor, says, "No, this man must survive. His survival is a sign from the Emperor." No problem. And he escapes with the party. Right, okay, cool. Awesome. Alright. Silas follows the party in exchange for not ratting them out. Good. As the game continues and the group has combat with some hive scum, Zoe begins to cause a problem. In exchange for saving Silas from the wreckage, he has chosen to vouch for the party and not to turn them in to the enforcers. However, Zoe immediately says in character, "No, he must die." I remember that he is a player character and a vital part of the campaign. What, dude? Dude. Okay, whenever you're writing really complex stories, you need to reread them. So we're not going mental here and saying things out of whack. Okay? So, one sec. Right, okay. So who is the paladin here? Okay. Silas I had no problems with, as the more the merrier. Okay. Okay, Silas is playing the Palatine Enforcer. Okay, fine. Cool. So why is Zoe trying to kill the Palatine Enforcer then? Zoe begins to cause a problem. In exchange for saving Silas from the wreckage, he has chosen to vouch for the party, right? Fair enough. And not to turn them into the enforcers. However, Zoe immediately says in character, "No, he must die." I remind her that he is a player character and a vital part of the campaign. She, however, does not back down, getting upset with me by saying, "But you said this was a grimdark campaign." I tell her that I can't let her kill her fellow party member on session 1. She pouts silently for the next 15 minutes and begins combat out of nowhere, breaking her silence. She opens fire on a group of palatines on patrol, and then gets upset when the rest of the party doesn't shoot with her. Thankfully, Silas talked the enforcers down, and we were able to get moved right along. Dude, I was expecting the Silas dude to be the issue, because he's the lawful good person in a party of criminals, right? Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you, I would have let her attack Silas and then just killed her. Allowed everybody to just shoot the shit out of her until she was Swiss cheese. You can't... Don't ever tell a player that they can't. Unless they literally can't, right? In this setting, what you've done here, what she can do, she can try and shoot the guy if she wants, right? That is within her remit. There's nothing physically stopping her from doing that, right? So yeah, let her do it. And then let her suffer the consequences. Kill a character off. Say, go make another character. We'll wait. We'll help you roll one up if you want. But, like, yeah, there are choices and consequences. And then, dude, always adhere to the rules of your setting. The minute you start to just be willy-nilly with your rules and what you're going to do with your setting, and what you let players get away with in that world, the campaign dies. It's just done. It's dead. You know what I mean? Don't ever say to her, you just can't do that on session 1. Sorry. No, that's not how it works, dude. Let her do it and then kill her off. Let her do it and then let her suffer the consequences. Because then you get to say, well, it's a grimdark campaign. I did warn you. Choices had consequences, right? And if she wants to leave, she can leave. But at least you've maintained the strictures and the structure of your game. You haven't bent it or broken it for one player, which you've kind of done here by saying you just can't do that, right? I understand why you're saying it, but yeah, you know. The brother-sister duo then refused to show up for 5 whole sessions. I even had to work around a bit. I had planned where Zoe talks her way into letting us into Delac territory, where I was going to have some side quests posted there. Instead, I had Riv let us explore the ash wastes for a while. The excuses I was given from Zoe and Silas were the same every week. Oh, I'm just not feeling up for it, or oh, I'm not feeling too well. I'm okay with it if you're sick or busy, but if you have a head cold for 3 weeks in a row, you need to go to the bloody hospital. These comments also cut pretty deep because I felt like rather than criticising my campaign, they chose to ignore and lie to me. Dude, then cut them out. Okay? I'm going to be honest, right? If I'm running a campaign and people decide to not show up and they let me know the day of, I kick them. I'm being serious. Unless it's something serious. My dog died. You know, my mom has cancer. I've broken down somewhere. Fine. No problem. If it's, I'm not feeling up to it on the day of, you're gone. You're gone. You know? I've stopped all campaigns in their tracks before because I put a lot of effort into my role-playing campaigns, and if somebody doesn't turn up on session 1 and the other people are having a good time, but, like, you know, it's kind of not going anywhere, I don't hold another session. I'm like, yeah, that didn't work out, no problem. I move on with my life, I move on with my time. Your time is too precious to put up with stuff like this. You say, no, if you're not bothered, then don't come and we won't do it. It's no skin off my nose. Absolutely, all fine. They finally show up on session 6, where we were in the process of sabotaging the Necromunda planetary defense systems. From the moment they were in, they pestered the other players about what they had missed. I would be okay with this if it was just a couple of questions or ideas, but they asked me the same question in which I gave the same answer 3 times in a row, back to back, stopping the game each time. This was because they were on their phones, not listening to my explanation, and finally, rescaling and readjusting the character sheets, we continued on. The party was around level 8 at this point, and I had to add a few buffs here and there to make sure Silas and Zoe didn't have a hard time following around the rest of the party. When they asked what we were doing, and I told them that we were sabotaging the security defences for Necromunda, Silas had a fit, stating, "But all those people will be defenceless," before trying to apprehend the party in some sort of righteous event. This was now the third time I had to remind him of the change of heart he had after being saved by the Hive scum. He wasn't hearing any of this. Zoe then backed up her brother, which didn't make any sense, because if he won, her character will be detained by the Palatine Authority. They then decided to initiate combat against the group. Good, murder them, kill them off, gone, and ask them to leave your premises. Done. You've solved your problem. Your problem should have been solved anyway by not letting them back in the first place, dude. What we have here is 2 players who don't really want to be there, then let them go. Cut them out like a cancer. Cut them out and ostracize them. Go. Gatekeep. Goodbye. You're gone. Don't let them back in. You've let them back in. Anything that happens from here on in, Snooky, is your fault, mate. Because look, all this is your fault. All of this is your fault. Okay? You let them back in. There will always be bad actors out there. There will always be bad role players and bad players to have at your table. right? Once they've shown you their hand, that they are just not very good people to roleplay with, don't roleplay with them. If you do, you're wasting your time, and anything that happens is on your head. Because you let them back in, you let them back to your table. Alright? They then decide to initiate combat against a group. I advise them, saying that this isn't a good idea, but they persist and open fire. Silas plays a critical fail. A 1. And in response to this action, and in an attempt to jolt him back to the rest of the gang, I say, and I quote, "Your bullets missed him entirely, and it's several innocent servitors who are working on the defence's power grid." Silas and Zoe lost their minds, calling me a monster for ending the servitors' lives so ruthlessly. I then tried to explain what a servitor was, which probably didn't help. I was then called a monster for roping them into such a cruel thing, even though I warned them several times beforehand, and Zoe even complained to me at session 0 that it wasn't grimdark enough. At this point, I was done. I calmly asked them both to leave my table and my home and not return. Yeah, dude, this is what I mean. You had to go nuclear here. You could have avoided all of this with a simple message. You know? Listen, that's 3 weeks you've not turned up now. I'm going to have to call it and say you're not coming back and your character's now dead. Alright? Sorry. But, like, you know, I can't waste my time. You're welcome back in future if you change your attitude a bit, but for now, no. Right? That's all you have to do. They looked to the party for support, only to be told the same thing. They threw their things together and stormed out of my home before blocking me on social media. I had enough of them treading on all of my hard work, and I sent them on their way. The rest of the campaign played out as normal, and I have since gotten everybody in that party into Warhammer 40k, and Will has even picked up some Grey Knights. Speaking of Grey Knights, before I wrap this up, why do you personally like them? I like them too, but what about them appeals to you specifically? Sci-fi knights in space that are really pure and are really like actual paladins. Dude, that's the shit. Put it in my veins. That's really, really cool. Also, I remember you saying you enjoyed it when models were sent in, so here is my Mama Turvagon and Norn Emissary I just finished. Yeah, there was no, there was nothing attached to this email, dude. Anyway, well, that's it for now, North. Feel free to add this whenever it fits your theme of the week. Your loyal listener, Snooky Fry. Thank you very much, man. Dude, but you did that to yourself, man. I'm being serious. You did that to yourself. You did not need, at all, to have those people at your table. You could have told them to go weeks in advance. And it would have been fine. You know, you will always have people who don't know how to roleplay properly, or who are just not very good players and are very selfish. And always, 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 this is going to sound weird, watch out for siblings. Or people who are almost as siblings. Just, yeah, they're going to back each other up all the time. They're going to take each other's side all the time. Or they're going to go after each other in some sort of weird sibling rivalry. Just vet these people. Vet these people. Your role-playing time is precious. Be very, very careful. Anyway, I love you all long time. I will speak to you very, very, very soon for some more Hobby Nightmares. I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.